Ah, Clash Royale. What a beautiful place. Where dreams are made and when barbs don't shave. What is this? A mortar? Such a beautiful, mesmerizing thing. Let's learn more. On stream, I played the popular Mortar Bait deck a lot. It's my go-to deck, it's my main deck, it's the deck I've gone to 6,600 trophies with, so I already know how to win with this deck. In this video, I'm going to be going over the deck, some basic strategy of the deck, what to do in your opening hand, and at the end, I got some tips and tricks like usual, so you guys can win a couple of your first games. So let's just like dance right into it. Let's just dance. Boom shakalaka! Here is the deck that I will be talking to you guys about today, and it is the 3.1 elixir cost Mortar Bait deck with the Barb barrel and the Fireball. But how do you play this deck? This deck is all about bait. So what does that mean? Well, pretend you're on the savannah. You're a lion looking for a meal, and you see in the background, in the distance, a beautiful black with white stripes, white with black stripes zebra. When you see the zebra, what do? You don't just attack it all out. You gotta play with your meal a bit. You gotta work with it. You gotta throw out a little bit of bait, and that's what you're gonna do with this deck. And how are you gonna do it with this deck? Well, you got lots of cheap swarm units. You're gonna use these cheap swarm units. Hopefully, your opponent will play either one of their splash units or one of their small spells. And once they do that, you go in for the kill. Hopefully, you'll be able to get a little bit of tower damage, and with the help of the mortar and the miner, hopefully, you'll win the game. I know what you're thinking.
But Cash, I hate the color green. I don't want to use goblins. What can I change the goblins for?
That's perfect timing because now we're going to be talking about what changes you can make to this deck. Starting off, you can't change Mortar. Mortar is, it's a Mortar Bait deck. You're not changing it. It's a staple in this deck. What's another card you can change in this deck? Well, one of them could be the Miner. The Miner is your win condition in this deck, one of the win conditions in this deck, and being a win condition, you can change it for another win condition. These win conditions can include the Hog Rider, the Royal Hogs, or the Royal Giant. Which one of these is the best? Well, it's hard to say. The Hogs, the Royal Hogs, and the Royal Giant are a little bit more consistent as a win condition, while the Miner is a little more versatile. And with how diverse this meta is, I personally like the Miner just because the versatility factor, but all of them work very, very well. The Royal Hogs, Hog Rider, and Royal Giant are commons and rares, so that means it's a little bit more free to play as well. So give them a try, whatever one you like the most. Also highest level. The next card that you can change is the Rascals. You can change the Rascals. What can you change the Rascals for? Well, the Rascals, you could change it for basically a tank killer of sorts. What does that mean? Well, you can change it for the P.E.K.K.A. You can change it for the Prince. You can change it even for the Knight. Each one is very, very different. The Prince and the P.E.K.K.A. are a little bit more tank killer oriented, where the Knight is more of a substitute for the Rascal, a little bit cheaper, makes your cycle a little bit quicker, and it's good and free to play, so give it a try. The last one, this is a little bonus, little bonus bonus. When I was making this video, saw that someone was using the cannon cart instead of the Rascals. I myself tried the deck, and surprisingly, it kind of worked. Yeah, it was weird. It kind of worked. I know it's not something, it doesn't sound like it works, but it kind of did, because the cannon cart, usually you want to destroy it on your opponent's side of the field, so I guess in this situation it would be your side of the field. Well, it can still defend the mortar, and it was there was a little bit of synergy there, so give it a try. That's another cool one as well. You're welcome. The next cards that you can change in this deck are the bait cards, and these cards include the Spear Goblins, the Bats, and the Goblin Gang. Starting off, you could change the Spear Goblins and the Bats for potentially the Dart Goblin and the Minion Horde. There are other changes you can make if you want. You can try the Goblins, you can try the Minions, but they're just not as good, I'm going to be honest. Bats, Spear Goblins, Minion Horde, Dart Goblin. Those are your 4 options for these. They're not even like epics or legendaries. You have no excuse. You have no excuse. And the other bait card is the Goblin Gang. What can you change the Goblin Gang for? Well, you can actually change it for the Prince. I've seen people use the Prince and the Rascals in the same deck. This was very common about 2 or 3 metas ago, and it does work. Another card that I've tried a couple of times and I used in my deck for a while was the Skarmy instead of the Goblin Gang. It makes it a little different. It makes it a little bit more defensive oriented. Skarmy's very, very good on defense, very, very good at baiting a lot of spells, but the offensive capabilities of the Skarmy just is not as good as the Goblin Gang. Also, the Goblin Gang can hit ground and air troops with the spear goblins. Very, very versatile card. I'd probably pick Goblin Gang, but you can also try the Skarmy. It's spell time, spell time. So the spells in this deck include the Fireball and the Barb Barrel. The Fireball can be changed for any big spell, really. It can be changed for the Poison. It can be changed for the Rocket. This is kind of a surprise one, a little razzle-dazzle, a little B-O-N-E-S, no, B-O-N-U-S, bonus, Skeleton Barrel. Yes, I did not stutter, I said Skeleton Barrel. The Skeleton Barrel works. It does work in this deck. It's a very, very good bait card. You can use it to tank for your mortar and defend the mortar. Not only that, but the death damage does almost work like a zap in a lot of situations. So dealing with the minion horde, if you have one small spell being the snowball or the zap and have the Skeleton Barrel, the pop of the Skeleton Barrel plus the additional zap can deal with a lot of your opponent's troops. It does work. I used it for a lot. Now that I think about it, I use Skeleton Barrel to get 6/6. Maybe I go back. And the last spell, the last card in this deck that you can change is the Barb Barrel. The Barb Barrel is the small spell in this deck, and you could basically change it for any other small spell. This can include the Log, the Zap, or the Snowball. That's what it's called. It's the Snowball. I almost forgot about my good old Snowball. All these spells work really well. I love the Snowball and the Barb Barrel personally. I love the Barb Barrel just because it's a unit that can tank for a lot of your squishier units, and the Snowball is just a really good card. And I'm the King of the North, and don't you forget it. And Snow is my middle name. What do you do in your hand? You have two hands. What are you going to do when you open the hands? I'm trying to say, what do you do in your opening hand? Personally, my favorite play with this deck is to go Goblin Gang, Beer Goblins, or the Bats at the back. It's a very, very versatile play. It kind of puts you in the driver's seat. You have a lot of options. You can go left side, you can go right side if need be. You can go neither side if you want, and it's a great way to start the game and start it safely. Another thing you can do is also miner on the tower, but make sure you use the space, that safe spot. Make sure you play it in the safe spot. Cool. I'm cool. If you do play your miner at the beginning of the game, just make sure you play it. I spat all over my camera. If your first play is using the miner, just make sure you're using the safe spot just so your opponent cannot NATO it to tower, because that puts you in a really, really rough spot for the rest of the game. It's time for the strategia, the strategy. What are you going to do, G? So how are you going to win with this deck? Well, I can't go over every specific matchup, but as a general idea, you have two win conditions in this deck, one being the mortar, one being the miner. And what you're going to do is you're going to have to figure out pretty quickly which one you're going to use to win the game. A lot of situations, you might be using the mortar as your win conditions. A lot of situations, you might be using the miner. And in a lot of situations, you could use both. The overall idea for this deck is to just keep hitting your opponent's tower, little chips at a time, every spear goblin spear or every miner hit. It adds up, even every mortar hit. It adds up, and hopefully all those will add up to a win. It's time for Cash's tip time. Tip it time, tip it time. Tip time. Oh, the do-da-day. Hey, the first thing I want to tell you guys, I guess the first tip I want to share with you guys is mortar placement. For the mortar, there are many placements. The first placement is the normal placement. This is where you're going to be placing your mortar at the bridge. You're going to play it a little off to the side, closer to the wall. Why do you do this? Well, it's a little harder for your opponent to defend. It just makes it easier so it focuses on that tower. You want the mortar to focus on that tower. If you are in a situation where you have to defend with the mortar, how do I do it? Where do I play it? Well, for the Hog Rider and the Ram Rider, you're going to be playing the mortar on the same side as the Hog and the Ram Rider are coming down, in the middle, but a little down. You play it a little down just so both towers can hit it. For the Golem and the Giant, you're going to be wanting to play it basically at the opposite side of where you're playing it for the Hog and the Ram Rider. You're going to be playing it on the opposite side of the arena that the Giant or the Golem are coming down. It's because it will be getting not only shot by both of the towers, but it also will have to walk further to the mortar, and it will just take more time. It'll get more hits, and it's good. It works. Trust me, I'm a doctor. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not a doctor. The last positioning is offensive. Offensive mortars are very, very good against Balloon, Hog Rider, spreaders, and even golems and giants, depending on the situation, if you need that last hit on tower. This positioning is playing it in the middle, all the way at the top, at the river, and depending on what lane your opponent plays their units, you're going to be shifting the mortar a little to the left or a little to the right. This will not only defend your opponent's units, pull them into the middle, but it'll also be able to shoot your opponent's tower. So it's a win-win-win. It's a win-win-win. No, 2 wins. 3 wins? What's 2 plus 2? 4? Minus 1? That's 3? Is that quick maths? The next cash tip I have for you guys is playing the miner in the safe spot. What does that mean? Well, there is a positioning on both of your opponent's towers on the furthest point, the furthest corner from your opponent's, I guess, king tower. This is a safe spot because this is the only positioning that you can play your miner on your opponent's tower, which keeps it safe from NATO. Keeps it safe from getting pulled all the way to your opponent's king tower and activating king tower by accident. Make sure you play your miner in this safe spot at the start of the game and until you know for a fact that your opponent does not have NATO in hand, because if they activate king tower, it puts you in a very, very bad situation for the rest of the game. And the third cash tip I have for you guys today is something that I already brought up before, and that is to keep track of your opponent's counters. Keep track of the cards that you're trying to bait out of your opponent. These can include their spells, this can include their units that have splash damage. And I know this is easier said than done, but practicing this with just maybe one of their spells or maybe one of their units and just trying to keep track of when they have it out of cycle is a great way to learn how to bait out these units, know when to go in with your units, and overall win games with this deck. It is going to be hard at first, but practice it and you will be able to get better at it. And it's a stepping stone on learning how to count cards as well, which is another thing that's very, very good in this game. I think I'm rambling too much. I sometimes ramble too much. This next tip is number 4. I think it's number 4, and this is probably one of the most important tips that I'm going to say in this video. So make sure you open your ears very big. Make sure you open them. This tip is to, even if there is one unit alive, let's say you have a bat, a spear goblin, a goblin, whatever the unit is, and you have miner in your hand or bar barrel, make sure you throw the bar barrel or the miner to tank for this one unit. Because even if one bat, one spear goblin, one goblin, or even one rascal girl gets on tower, they do a lot of damage. They do a lot of damage, and even if they don't get that many hits, even one hit matters in this deck. You're going to want to chip away at your opponent. I keep bringing up chips. Where are the chips at? The next cash tip I have for you guys, number 5, is to fireball miner combination. What I mean by this is if you play your miner and your opponent keeps picking it up, let's say with the Skarmy or the Goblin Gang or whatever they pick it up with, the E-Wiz, well, playing that preemptive fireball can put your opponent in a really, really awkward situation where you can not only take out that unit, the miner gets the lock on tower, but they also have to play another unit. A lot of times people get scared. They don't think this far ahead, and you can get additional hits with the miner, plus you also hit the tower with your fireball, so the fireball gets damaged. So not only is it a great way to deal damage on the tower, but it's also a great way to end a game as well. It is high risk, high reward, but if done correctly, it can be the difference between winning and losing a game. The 6th cash tip I have for you guys today is the best tip, boo-ba-doo. I wish I could sing. Using the mortar and the miner at the same time is very, very strong. It's something I didn't think of when I first started using this deck, but there's a lot of synergy with using them at the same time, especially if your opponent has elixir disadvantage and you have the elixir lead, just because it puts your opponent in a weird situation where they have to either pick defending the miner or they pick defending the mortar, and whatever one they don't decide to defend against will most likely get a couple of hits on tower, and it's going to be a great amount of chip damage, and you could just, it's good. It works. Not only that, the mortar, if it does hit on tower and the miner is on tower, the mortar hits actually have splash damage, and any unit around the tower that's trying to deal with the miner does get hit as well. This is something I didn't think of when I first started, so give it a try. It works sometimes, but you might not want to do this unless you have a little bit of elixir lead. The 7th tip I have for you guys today is to use your mortar defensively. Using your mortar defensively is a very great way to kind of get control of the game again. It has a lot of applications. First off, one of the applications is that it could potentially bait out a spell. A lot of people, if you play your mortar defensively, will use a fireball, and that's one less thing, a fireball or a poison, and that's one less thing that you have to worry about. That's a card that's baited out. Even the mortar can bait cards. What? what? It can. It also puts your opponent in a situation where they have to make the next move. In a lot of situations, they will go on the aggressive, you can defend, and hopefully you can do a counter push. And even if your mortar is still alive, it can help with your counter push. It has a lot of range, especially if you played a little higher defensive mortar. It can even help with a counter push. It's very, very powerful. Defensive mortars, give them a try. It's usually not a bad play if you just don't know what to do. The next cash tip I have for you guys today is to try not to give your opponent too much value. And what I mean by this is you have a lot of cards that are vulnerable to the same thing, the same spell, the same splash unit that your opponent plays, and making sure that you don't give your opponent too much value with one spell is very, very important for winning a game. So for example, if you play the Rascals and the Goblin Gang to defend one of your opponent's big pushes and they have a log, they are going to not only kill your Rascal girls, but they're also going to deal with your Goblin Gang as well. One bird, two stones. Is that how the saying goes? How does the saying go? Two stones, my bird. Don't stone my bird. Don't stone birds. And the last cash tip I have today is to let your mortar die. Letting your mortar die is something that I didn't do originally when I first started playing this deck. A lot of times I over defended my mortar, and you try to avoid that. If a mortar gets 1 or 2 hits on your opponent's tower, that's good. That's really, really good. You don't really need more than that. And if you over defend, you might put yourself, sure, you might get a couple of extra hits with the mortar, but you might put yourself so far back on elixir that your opponent could just swallow you whole. And you don't want to get swallowed whole by anybody. Not your opponent, not a whale, a stork, what swallows you whole? A shark? No. Anacondas I think can eat you whole, so that's bad. Avoid anacondas. And it's all over. You know what they say? Every end needs a beginning. Every story comes to an end. What goes down must come up. We're done. We're done. What I'm trying to say is we're done. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. I definitely recommend trying out this deck because this is actually one of my favorite decks. This is the deck I use predominantly on ladder. And it's a very, very powerful deck. It's very, very free to play. So if you are a free to play player, think about maybe potentially using this deck. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did enjoy, make sure you slash it. No, don't slash it. Slap that like button, slap that subscribe button, hit that notification bell and all that stuff. And yeah, in the comments, let me know which guide you guys want to see next. What starter guide you want me to make next? What deck you want me to do it on? If you want me to do a 2.6 hog, a bridge spam deck, or even maybe, let's say, maybe even a ridiculous deck like the Royal Recruit Sparky deck that's been around. Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I hope you guys have a good rest of your night if it's nighttime. And if it's the morning, I hope you guys have a good morning. And make sure you have a breakfast, because breakfast, it's the most important meal of the day. So eat it.